The project team that's been working on the corridor plan is ready to begin presenting some of the concepts for the phase 1 portion of the railroad corridor plan. Because of the depth of the information involved in presenting the concepts, we felt it was the best approach would be to provide presentation videos on the project, on our project website, the hub site, rather than providing one or two rather long, probably tedious presentations. Some of the advantages of this approach is that the introductory presentation materials and the proposed concepts can be looked at by the reviewers at their own pace and on their own time frame, and they can be revisited as often as needed. It allows people time to take in and better grasp the information and compose their comments, as opposed to the tendency to react immediately to a longish presentation. It can be available also for those who prefer not to attend meetings and prefer not to comment at public meetings. And it allows for all interested parties and all users to have a more opportunity and a more equitable opportunity to comment. And the comments are all provided on a level playing field where they're all kind of taken in through one process. A question and comment opportunities are going to be provided with these videos, so the project team can gather information as we receive them about the concepts, and we can also help answer questions that people might have about the information that they are looking at. What we will be doing is really sending you and the public off to do your homework to look at these videos, and then for the next few weeks or the month of September primarily, giving people an opportunity to look at those videos, weigh in on the comment and questions section. We'll then be scheduling a follow-up public meeting on the project and the concepts for the September 23rd meeting time for the CAC meeting here. And at that time, we'll present the comments that we have heard to date and discuss any future adjustments or further considerations that need to be made to the plan based on the public input. So in just a few minutes, the consultant, Daniel Heyer, is going to be providing a very brief overview of what's contained in those videos to kind of get you started on those. But let me just real quickly outline some of the other engagement steps so that you're clear on how we're going to go about getting this information over the next month. As I said, the focus is going to be on looking at the videos on our website. Serena Gruria from CAPE is here to kind of give you a quick overview of where they are and what that information is going to look like. And she'll be talking in just a minute about that. But we are focused in on getting web information through the website, but we'll also be augmenting that process with pop-up locations in the Belvedere and Mallside area, where the concepts will also be available for reviewing on a more in-person basis, and staff will be available to receive questions and comments. Essentially the same information will be available at the pop-ups. We're also considering placing banner displays along the roadway in strategic locations that will display the potential improvements, and we'll probably be using the same flyer system that we used for the kickoff meeting with the real estate sign container things in the ground, but people walking by along the sidewalk can pick up and again, get the same type of information. So just real quickly, the next steps after that September meeting will be forwarding the work we've done to date for the Board of Supervisors in October to get their initial response and feedback as to the next steps. We can discuss the next steps in more detail later, but at this point in time, I'd like to turn it over to Serena to kind of go over where that information is going to be located And then Daniel's going to give you a kind of brief overview of the content of those videos. Serena?
Thanks, David. So I am Serena Gruya, and David mentioned CAPE. I'm part of the Communications and Public Engagement Office. I'm the Public Engagement Specialist at the county. I'm going to share my screen. So hopefully you're all aware of the engagement website, the hub we put together for the project. The website address is publicinput.com/Rio Corridor. I'm currently sharing the front page, and hopefully you've all been acclimated to this, and we have some phases, and I'm going to show you up here at the top, the community learning series. This is the content that David was talking about that we've prepared to get everyone up to date and informed about the project thus far, so that we can all come back together and have a really good conversation. So at this point, we have 2 podcasts that kind of dig into the work so far, what the design process has been like, and some of the more technical aspects of the plan thus far. These podcasts are also available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, the Apple Podcasts. So wherever you get your podcasts, you can look for Let's Talk Albemarle, and those 2 will show up for you. Scrolling down, we have 2 videos. The first video is the introduction to the Rio Corridor Plan. Daniel's going to go into a little bit of that content here in a second. Directly following that, you'll have a few questions that relate directly to the video itself. You can choose to post publicly or keep your comments private. We will receive them either way. And then coming down here, we have an introduction to the design concepts. We really would encourage you to go in order so that you can get the full understanding of how we got to this point. Then again, some following questions once you've reviewed the material, and then a general bucket for any additional feedback or comments or questions. And then clicking submit will share your information with us. So like David said, we will be having some pop-up opportunities, and the content that we'll share at those opportunities will be much the same as what we have on the website. We're just trying to reach a variety of different, take a variety of different approaches so that we can get as much information from the community as possible. So this website is one opportunity. You can always get in touch with David and the project team directly and share your ideas. But again, we're going to try to make this as open to everyone on the corridor, people who live, work, play, travel, etc. And so, Daniel, I will hand it over to you to go into some of the video information.
Thanks. So I'm Daniel Heyer, and our team at Line and Grade has, for the last 8 months or so, been diving deep into understanding the corridor and the many aspects of the corridor. And what has resulted is, one, a very thorough understanding of both the corridor itself and the deficiencies of the corridor, but also just an abundance of information that we feel like we wanted to share. And so we purposely organized our presentation materials into these 2 videos because we felt like it was important to bring you, the community, and like Serena said, everyone who's using this corridor, whether it's traveling through it on a commute to work, or a business owner along it, or a resident adjacent to, we wanted everyone to have the ability to know what we know, at least in short form. And so these videos attempt to do that. The first video, titled An Introduction to the Corridor Plan, really uses a series of very simple, almost benign questions to begin to explore and develop a foundational understanding of the corridor itself. For lack of more creative questions, it was who, what, where, when, why, and how type questions, right? But what these questions do is they allow us to dig into things like charting the area's growth over the past 80 years, reviewing historic design guidance that has largely influenced the built environment that we now are dealing with, We explore things like frontage conditions along the corridor and what that means and why that's important. We review important design guidance like access management criteria that's established by the Department of Transportation. We review safety concerns and where those concerns are more concerning than other places. We review noteworthy deficiencies, and we try to explain and capture what is the qualitative experience of the corridor for the various users. We introduce technical terms and try to explain them, things like level of service, and why that's an important understanding for our consideration of design elements. And so the first video, it's about both videos are about 20 minutes. The first video is 20 minutes of establishing a foundational understanding of the corridor. The second video, likewise, presents an abundance of information. This time, we're trying to stand on the shoulders of the foundation of understanding to promote solutions that reflect the deficiencies we've observed, the safety conditions that we've found to be concerning, and we introduce some of our analytical content and how all of that results in a specific set of solutions for various aspects along the corridor. Now, the design concepts are introduced in two different methods. We introduce intersection design concepts and we introduce corridor design concepts. And those are uniquely independent in that the deficiencies at intersections are specifically different than the deficiencies along corridors, and the solutions are specifically different. Nonetheless, because we're looking at this corridor in a holistic and unified manner, the corridor and the intersection all work together. But this allows us to reach one of our project goals, which is to bring a unifying design and aesthetic to the corridor from one end to the other. The other thing we talk about in the second video is the phasing of the work. This project will be presented in two phases. Phase one is Rio Road from the John Warner Parkway heading north and west toward 29. The second phase will be from the John Warner Parkway heading south toward the jurisdictional boundary with the city. And so the design concepts presented in this video are specifically to phase one. Phase two will come at a later date and be presented in likewise fashion. So, like Serena and David both said, we feel like this medium of presentation will allow folks to participate in the presentation as if I was giving it to you here tonight, except that if I presented both of these slideshows more or less back to back, everybody would be pretty weary of the conversation by the time I was done, and maybe the feedback we garnered from it would be less helpful. So we're hoping that this medium will give everybody an opportunity to be thoughtful and reflective in their feedback, and also to understand what we understand, at least to the greatest extent practical. We have begun to share the information that you will view in these videos with obviously the county, with the Department of Transportation, and with specific stakeholders along the corridor, because a number of properties we are working toward a mutually beneficial solution in front of their parcels. A good example is KTEC. KTEC, because of its proximity to the John Warner intersection, plays an important part in being able to allow us to solve the challenges there. And so we are working with specific stakeholders at this time. And so some of the detail might seem like it's lacking in certain areas, but it's only because we're trying to work toward a specific solution with a specific landowner. Thus far, the feedback we have gotten has been very positive. The county has been very supportive of the design concepts, county staff. The Department of Transportation has been very supportive of what you will see. They've been, I think, very pleased with what we've developed so far. And as far as the specific stakeholders we've already been working with, I think all of them see the benefit of what we're proposing, but we are, again, working with them specifically to reach a good solution in front of their properties where impact might be possible. So again, to echo Serena, I do think it's important to watch the videos in order, because I think if you jump straight into wanting to see what the concept might be, you might miss out on why what's been selected is important, and reflecting on things like how access management plays a very big part on this corridor, and how safety plays a very big part in this corridor. And yes, there is a lot of traffic, and sometimes there's a lot of delays. But when you look at the corridor holistically from one end to the other, what you begin to observe is that all of the solutions need to work together very specifically, and those things are discussed in the first video. So with that, my brief introduction is done. We hope that you engage this material, that you listen to it, both the podcast and the videos. Hope that you share it with your neighbors and your friends. We hope that you leave us your comments. And as we review the comments, we will try to organize them into basically like-minded comments, so we can begin to observe trends in the feedback. So when we come back to you in a month, we might not answer your comment or question specifically, but we're hoping that nobody's questions or comments are one of a kind, that we predict that most comments will follow some general trends, and we'll pick up on those trends. We'll respond accordingly, whether through presentation or through design changes or edits. So that is my brief recap of the two videos and why I think they're both very important, and why I hope you watch them both. They're both about 20 minutes. So it's about 40 minutes in total, not much longer than Ted Lasso. So I think you should find time to fit that in.
Okay, thank you. We'll go around and ask if the boards have some clarifying, the members have some clarifying questions. I have one. Serena, you spoke very fast. Tell me the podcast site again, since I'm a big podcast listener, if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, you can go to Spotify or Amazon.
What's the name? What's the name?
Oh, it's Let's Talk Albemarle.
Let's Talk Album. Okay, thank you. Okay, so let me go around, and one of our members also has a couple of words he'd like to share with you, but let me ask if there are any questions first. Nobody has questions. Judy?
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. My question is, you said that there are two 20-minute videos, which will equal 40 minutes, plus the time to answer. Is there the ability to save your information, your comments, after, say, you've watched one of them and you want to come back? And is there a deadline that's stated at the beginning of the survey for the questions?
That's a great question. So once you answer or share your comments and you hit comment, it will be saved into the system. You can come back and add additional comments if you feel. You can also respond to other people's comments if you see fit. In terms of the window to keep this survey open, I think we're gonna try to keep it open as long as possible so that we can collect as much information. Because the follow-up meeting to this is going to respond to all of the input that we've received so far. So David, maybe you should chime in here about the timing on that.
Yeah, I don't think we've set an exact time, but we would certainly keep it open after the September meeting and certainly up to the board meeting. I think we would want to put some point in time where we can kind of do an assessment of what those comments are. But the plan won't be adopted in October. It's going to be fine-tuned after that. So there will be further opportunities to comment down the road. So it's sort of a vague answer, but it'll certainly be open into the October timeframe. And even if we were to cut it off at a certain period of time in October, there will likely be other opportunities to continue to comment on further refinements to the plan.
Okay.
David, if we want to have our comments appear, be proposed and presented at the 23rd meeting. When should we sort of get those done? By the 20th or something?
That might be a question that Daniel will help me with. Certainly we have to have some prep time and to be able to assess and do some tabulation and assessment of those comments. So I think probably at least a week in advance of that meeting would give us the best time to kind of fine tune those comments. Daniel, you think that's workable? schedule. Again, we
I
wouldn't
think
close the
it's,
comments.
I think the sooner the better in terms of having taken the content in and responded to it. The sooner we can begin to see what people are saying, the sooner we can begin to understand and react to that ourselves. Obviously, we'll keep it open as long as possible. But if you want a question or an idea answered on the 23rd, the sooner you get it to us, the better.
And we're going to be looking on a real-time basis. So we'll be regularly checking them and working from the information that we receive from tomorrow on out.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions before I get to the, okay. Lee, you had a couple of things you wanted to add.
Yeah, if I could just share my screen briefly, see how this works.
On the bottom.
Just wanted you all to see, I haven't seen the videos, so, but I have, of course, seen the Kittleson and Associates design of the roundabout at John Warner Parkway and Rio Road East. So I came up with this alternative. This is what's called a dog bone roundabout, where instead of roundabout being a circle, you kind of take the circle and stretch it into an oval and then crunch the center together. And so you have part of the roundabout here, and then the rest of it is farther up here. And what that allows you to do, instead of addressing just the problems at that particular intersection, it also solves the problems at Greenbrier Terrace and Belvedere Boulevard, both of which are very difficult to make left turns out of under the current situation, and which a roundabout at just at the intersection of Rio Road and John Warner Parkway won't do alone. It also results in better traffic flow. The through traffic is not restricted as it is in a roundabout, which would basically cause stop and go traffic. And then it also has a pedestrian and bicycle overpass so that you take the pedestrians off the road. Other proposals for unsignalized pedestrian crossings, I think, are probably pretty risky, and they're predicated on the assumption that there really aren't any pedestrians. So, but I think pedestrians would use the facilities more if it was safe to cross. So if you have a bus stop as shown here on the, in this particular area, it's northbound Rio Road, it gives you a way to get across to K-Tech, which is, this is their K-Tech driveway. Also, it accommodates a roundabout at what's now Rio Point instead of Parkway Place. But so now Dunlora Drive is no longer blocked off that you can't turn left there. It's much easier to get in and out of there. It's much easier to get in and out of Rio Point. And this works with their plan because the buildings that they're proposing are south of this. So that just something to keep in mind while you're looking at the other videos. Because I'm sure the comments don't give me ability to post attachments, but as you look at that, just keep in mind there are other alternatives. And cost-wise, interestingly, there was $9 million in smart scale funding for the roundabout. This would use about the same amount of funding. You have $1 million here for retaining wall because of the terrain. You've got about $1 million in right-of-way acquisition up here, $4 million for the construction costs, $2 million for the pedestrian bridge, and $1 million for the engineering, brings you to the same $9 million. So it's totally feasible to utilize that funding for an alternate design of the roundabout. So that was it for me.
Okay.
And I don't know how to share my screen, but I'll figure it out, I guess.
Better. It
There it is.
got- So one does bring up one question that Lee had struck me as he was talking, and I knew he was going to do this type of presentation. How do people give you things like Lee has suggested, drawings where they have some ideas?
So on the public input site, Lee, if you're able to convert that into a different type of file, like a PNG or a JPEG, I believe you can upload that to the system.
Okay, thank you.
Pick the box that you want to respond to and upload it into that. Maybe at the bottom, the final question that asks for like, you know, the general bucket of responses, that would be appropriate there.
And if there's any complication or difficulty with doing that, you can also send it to me through email, and I will make sure that it gets documented.
Okay, thank you.
So that sort of brought me to another question. There are a number of people I know in the area who are really sort of blind to this, and I don't know whether we've gotten out. I know I've spoken to David a number of times about an outreach program of some sort. And people who are knowledgeable and actually know how to use computers, let alone people who don't have access to computers. Is there something going to be at the library, for example, where they can, a poster and telling them how they can access the site? Is there something going to be at the center? We have the center director here that will do that. There's a whole bunch of areas that I don't think you're really reaching out enough to get local people's input.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I've been in touch with the center and one of the pop-up locations, so they're going to get back to me about when their most, you know, their most high traffic days are, and we're going to do a pop-up there in person. But that's a great idea to have a poster up there in the bulletin board. Same with Northside Library. In the past, they've been really good about sharing flyers that we give them to people who come in. That's another great idea. We're also going to have some yard signs that have the website and the QR code so that people can find out about the opportunities to be in person at those pop-ups. Similarly at KTech, they have a bulletin board. So we're going to try, and again, any additional places that you feel would be good representation of people who haven't been engaged yet, definitely send that information to David, because we're going to try as hard as we can to get this out there. So, you know, I went door to door and some of the apartment complexes and shared flyers there. So we're, yeah, any opportunity that we have to get more people involved, just share that with David.
Okay, so the other sort of area is I'm more in the phase 2 section. And you ought to be starting now to reach out to, I don't mean to lecture you, but it would be good if we started now really to reach out to the phase 2 so you get a better sense of what people think down that portion of the road as well.
I think we're at a point in time where we are beginning to ratchet up. I think Daniel and the consultant team is at the point in time they are with phase 1 now. They can really engage in phase 2, and Daniel, Serena, and I are getting into that next step of notifying people. As soon as jointly with these pop-up locations that we're talking about for phase 1, we'll probably provide some information for phase 2. We don't want to confuse people, but we will be at very shortly within the next 2 months to begin engaging and making people aware of phase 2 is underway.
Tom, you had a question?
Yes, I was concerned. Have you thought about the congregations at the churches, getting some of the, trying to get them involved?
So I reached out directly to all the churches along the corridor, and we've met with, I think with one of the churches so far in a Zoom meeting.
City Church was a participant with our meeting with KTech when we went over concepts. I believe that's the only church that has, or religious assembly location that's gotten back to us, though, I believe.
Okay.
Marty,
Audrey?
what if someone in the public attendee that has a question has had their hand up for a while?
Okay, why don't we ask the public first? Audrey, I see you come after. Why don't you bring in the public person, please?
All right. LL Drummond, please unmute yourself and start speaking.
Thank you, Marty. I think you addressed a good part of my question, but so we should assume for phase 2 that that is not running serially, but that will run kind of at the same time. We're trying to figure out with phase 2. I mean, is that going to be a year from now when ideas are shared, or is that going to be 6 months from now? I just didn't know how you're staging that.
I can try to respond to that. So if you feel like phase 2 is where you are more influenced by the study, I would still encourage you to at least watch some of the phase 1 information, because phase 2 and phase 1 overlap, and they overlap substantially at the John Warner Parkway and the influence of the John Warner Parkway. Phase 2, we are actively working on design concepts for now. So it is running behind phase 1 in development, but it's not by much now. So we're catching that up. I would expect that you would be hearing from us again in the next couple of months for presentation of videos and likewise presentation to what phase 1 is having now. So I do think you would be well informed to pay attention to what we've just posted in the podcast, which go into a lot of the history as well, which covers phase 1 and phase 2.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me follow up a little bit on that, Daniel. Audrey, I see you, and I'll come back to you in a second. There are some decisions that are going to be made by the board on phase 2 before it seems that you're going to reach conclusions on phase 2. There's some land, as you know, as I'm sure you know, that are in the phase 2 section that could be influenced by some of your findings. And so that's going to come after the board is scheduled to make a decision on some of the zoning applications. Is that right?
So I may ask David Benish to also join in. Do you want to go first, David? I don't want to overspeak for you.
Well, I'm going to talk for you then, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but
Okay.
Some of those projects that are under review in phase 2 are actually being incorporated into the work and the assessments done in phase 1. So the Rio Point location and the Rio Crossing are on the radar screen, Rio Commons, excuse me, are on the radar screen of the consultant. And I think those projects have been part and parcel of some of the decision-making and recommendations going into phase 1. So I think that's the primary area where we have rezonings in place. One of the reasons that we do want to bring phase 1 forward to the Board of Supervisors in an October timeframe is to report out to them where we are with our concepts, because there are some decisions that do need to be made, actually more related to the design work for the roundabout for John Warner Parkway. But we do want the direction that we're headed in the board's hands quickly, so the board can provide us direction and the board can be aware of what's moving forward in this study as they take on the rezoning requests that we'll be seeing in October and November. Rio Commons, if you recall, is a by right development, so there is really not a lot of latitude in that project review. So Daniel, I don't know if you can pick up on me or correct anything that I'd said.
I was only simply going to add that when we do go to the board in October, the board will get an update comprehensive to phase 1 and phase 2, because at that point in time, phase 2 will be almost entirely caught up to phase 1. And so the board will probably get the first dish of that or about the same time as the CAC. So be looking at October for phase 2 information to begin flowing more freely.
We certainly are going to continue to take public comment, but at least that first draft of work on phase 2 will be able to do that with the board and begin distributing that out.
And why, I don't want to be argumentative about it, but we seem to be mixing the phases a little bit. And it seems to me that I'm getting to the point where I don't understand what the phase 2 activity is going to be relative to the phase 1. I understand your point about what the board can do and can't do in terms of zoning, site survey is, that also can be addressed. And it just seems to me that we're not getting a clear picture right now.
I'm not sure I understand what you mean by not getting a clear picture. Could you maybe elaborate on that a little bit?
You said you would go up to John Warner Parkway. How far past John Warner Parkway are you going down?
Yeah, the language we use is called the effective area of the intersection, which probably doesn't mean anything to you per se. But when you consider the effective area of an intersection, such as John Warner Parkway, usually the distance away from the intersection you include could be between 500 and 1,000 feet.
Okay.
So a lot of the frontage along the Rio Points project has been considered. But again, when you watch the video, not to give any spoilers, but I think the video will clarify a lot of what's happening along the frontage of that parcel.
Okay, thank you. I won't pursue that any further. Audrey, you had a question, then we'll move on. You're zoned. You're muted, Audrey.
How about that?
Okay.
Okay, I am excited to hear all the wonderful outreach that you guys are doing. I don't think I've ever seen that in recent history. So thank you very much. Might I suggest to place signs where people can safely pull off the road to pick up information or copy the information from the signs. We don't need more problems on Rio or John Warner. And also, so many of us use that who don't live on the corridor to get anywhere. And so some signs along 29 North, I would suggest, and maybe some signs into Carsbrook or the roads leading into the Meadows and those other communities, Greenbrier. Thank you.
You bring up a really good point when Daniel, David, and I talk about where we should have pop-ups and where we should put signs. We can't, it's really hard to find a safe spot, and that just speaks to the nature of the corridor right now. So again, you all find that you would find a suitable space for a pop-up or a sign, please let us know.
ACAC, the new grocery store, 7-Eleven at Rio, the ice cream store, Carsbrook.
Okay.
I'll make the rounds with some flyers for sure.
And shopping.
I can help. I'll put some up around 29.
Okay, shopping as well. Okay, thank you, Daniel, Serena. I think we're finished with this session.